a divide, and I think it so often affects the church. And what I wanted to do is bring unity to this and help us to move beyond, so that even people who may be politically in one party could actually work together with someone in another political party. People who have different theological views could find a way to work together. What I discovered is that there's often, when we look at culture, there's two false choices. The first false choice is assimilation. When we completely assimilate and begin to look exactly like the culture around us, sometimes in order to reach the culture, sometimes out of an incredible fear of the. One of the best books to preach on, it really is the book of Daniel. To look at, I think Daniel is one of the most relevant books that you could preach on in order for your congregation and your people to understand culture. Has anybody preached on Daniel in the last 5 years? Wow, no, really? One couple hands. Wow, I would really encourage you to dig in. There are so many amazing principles in that book to understand how he was able to not assimilate and to make one of these two false choices. But the first one is assimilation. And the way it worked back then is you remember the story that when Nebuchadnezzar was conquering the Jews and defeating the cities, they had a couple different options. They could enslave a city. That was one option, but oftentimes what would happen is after a few decades they would rise up and then try and overthrow those who were in power over them, or they could push them out of the city, just kick them out of the city and take over the city. But then you would have them come back and attack you. So what they decided to do is they thought the best way to overtake an entire city, short of wiping the whole thing out, was to take the best and the brightest out of the city and take them into captivity. This was an actual military strategy. They figured if they took 10,000 of the best and the brightest and put them in, gave them the best jobs, the best houses, the best education, that within a generation they would be so assimilated that they would be harmless. They would never come back and reconquer them. And so that's what they were doing. It was a deliberate plan to assimilate the opinion makers of the time. And so when they were first brought to a staging area outside of Babylon, and before they were brought in, a prophet, not Jeremiah, we know about this because Jeremiah talks about it, a prophet writes a letter to them and says to them, do not go into Babylon, the whore of Babylon. Do not go into the city. You're going to be assimilated. You'll lose your Judaism. Before you know it, you won't even worship God. You won't love God. Stay outside the city and encamp outside of the city. And be tribal. And that's the other false alternative. So don't go in the city because you'll assimilate, but stay outside the city. That's the only safe place to go. And literally become your own tribe. Become your own self-protective thing. And those are still the two alternatives. If you look at churches, they're either very assimilated to the culture and they look like the culture, or they're much more tribalistic, standing apart, circling the wagons, don't want to look anything like it. The world, don't want to be contaminated by the world. We don't want our kids to come in any contact with the world, those sorts of things.